state consultant for the County of Mendocino and several other Northern California communities. Once again, we're looking at non-fiscal bills only. Up until this point, what I've been able to discover is that the county department heads have a deadline of October 1 of the year before to submit legislative requests to the executive office. From what I've been able to kind of discover so far, we don't have very many in the executive office at this time on state priorities and on state proposals. So what this means as far as non-fiscal bills that will be coming and that will be the most likely to be able to be sponsored by our members, Assemblymember Wes Chesbro and Senator Pat Wiggins, will be bills of a streamlining administrative nature, whereas, for example, it would be the Sheriff's Department must go through 15 different steps in order to do Activity A. And a streamlining bill that would reduce that process to 12 steps, things like that, that wouldn't necessarily cause great fiscal damage to the state budget, obviously, at this point, are the bills that are going to be the most likely to be able to be sponsored. What's going to happen is we're going to, in two Fridays from now, we're going to pass the state legislative deadline for bill introductions. And so what that means is we have somewhat of an urgency situation at this time, whereas if the County of Mendocino does feel that in the next few weeks we will be requesting state legislation to be carried on our behalf, that Don Peterson will need to go and secure a spot bill, which is essentially a placeholder, and language can be put into the bill after the deadline passes. But we only have a couple of weeks until that deadline passes, and we can no longer enter into a spot bill situation. Of course, there's always, we're in the first year of a 2-year legislative session, and so of course the first year, bills are going to come up, and bills that aren't politically viable or financially viable at the time will kind of be held over until next year. Once those bills are kind of looked at and they decide that they're really not going to be able to be negotiated out of whatever committee they may be held in at the time because they can't secure the votes to move the bill, you will see bills start to be gutted and amended. And so we will have an opportunity in the beginning of next year to potentially introduce language on the behalf of Mendocino County, of course with the agreements of our state legislators, to see if they will substitute the County of Mendocino's language into one of their bills. And so that's kind of where we're at on that regard.
Okay. We need to kind of move this along.
Sure.
When is the board members going to, you mentioned the list of projects or earmarks, but we haven't, or I haven't seen, is, you know, as you say, it's going into committee next week, but don't you think it should be distributed to all board members?
Of course. The draft proposals were just completed, actually except for one I'm still working on this afternoon, were just completed as of late last evening. And so by the end of day today, I expect to have them as edited as we can to that point. Tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, General Government Committee will meet.
And last week, or actually on the 16th, we wrote a letter to Senator Wiggins' office requesting a local meeting on the on-site septic treatment regulations. Have we got any sort of response from any of our?
I have had no response from either Assemblymember Chesbro or Senator Pat Wiggins' office. That letter did go out right away, and also the more kind of involved, comprehensive policy letter that stated the county's issues with the proposed regulations has also been drafted as well. And so hopefully I'll be able to kind of get more of an answer this afternoon from their Capitol staff. But
to date, we haven't had any response back. Thank you very much.
No, we have not.
Supervisor Brown, you have a question?
Yes, on the, I forget what the Assembly bill number is, but there is the hearing tonight on the wastewater.
AB 885.
It's 885.
And I understand, Mr. Chair, you are going and will testify for us?
Yeah, that was direction of the board. That I will be.
Yes, and the Health and Human Services Director, as well as our office, have drafted speaking points for staff and for Supervisor Pinches to to take if you feel the need.
I'll be expecting them today.
And we were able to kind of get the proposed opinion from CSAC as well, and so they're consistent with CSAC's message as well.
Well, I think it's a clear statement that the board opposed to the unanimous vote of this.
Absolutely.
That's probably about more than anybody, including me, could say down there. So, Supervisor Brown.
Yes, just one other question. We were to ferret out whether any groups were suggesting or had done research of this particular proposed regulation as a takings of private property. There was another legal question that we had during the discussion on these septic rules.
Yeah, I was going to have Janine report that.
Yeah.
But you can
Oh, okay.
I have one of my
sorry.
attorneys working on an opinion for the board, a formal opinion for the board on that, but in general, most likely, the regulation itself is not considered a taking, but we will provide you with a full written opinion of that, and also, we were going to give some talking points for Supervisor Pinchas for tonight as well.
Okay.
Tom, you have your pen up, you want to?
Yeah, just as, I'd look to see if anybody had any other comments. I just had a few follow-ups to Lisa's presentation. and
Lisa,
also
are you
something-
concluded?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's our intent on the CEO's website, by next week, we're going to have a series of different explanations about economic stimulus. We're getting lots of questions from the public and from the press. I think there's a lot of confusion about what economic stimulus is all about. I received late yesterday just a summary of amendments submitted to the Rules Committee for H.R. 1, which is House Representatives 1, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And it goes on for 24 pages. Those are just amendments that are submitted, and they go from the gamut from different areas of economic development to family planning issues. All spectrums of the political process are being represented through what is supposed to be an economic stimulus bill. So what we are going to attempt to do is educate both the public and the press that contrary to the way this is portrayed in a lot of different areas about being shovel-ready, that is not necessarily how the legislative process will work. So we're going to set up some resources for people to refer to. We're dealing with it internally with the cities and with the various other agencies. I also wanted to let you know that through the legislative the earmark process that we're working on, that we're going through our normal process of going through the committee first, and then the board members will see it on the third. We've taken a very balanced approach. We have partners in the private community with our local hospitals. We have partnerships going with cities on various issues. So we have attempted to give you a very well-rounded approach toward the earmark process, and I think we have some great projects for you. And finally, I'll follow up on Jennifer Wyatt, some of her comments. I just received an email from our legislative advocates in Sacramento, and there's discussion today from the LAO having to do with moving funds, motor vehicle funds, over to the counties to provide for juvenile reform and some other programs that the state has not been successful with. That proposal is floating around the Capitol today, and you'll hear that they're talking about a shift of DMV fees from the state to the counties, and we'll keep you appraised of that as it happens over the next week.
Does that conclude your reports, Tom?
My comments.
Any comments from board members? Okay, with that, we're going to move on to agenda item 6F, discussion and possible action, including introduction and waive the reading of an ordinance amending section 2.14.010A of Mendocino County Code Chapter 2.14, compensation and mileage for grand jurors and petite jurors. CEO is the sponsor of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tom Mitchell, Chief Executive Officer.